Welcome back to the Chanel, where we dive into the most jaw-dropping tales of betrayal and payback. Today's story is one that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Imagine discovering that the two people you trust the most are hiding the darkest secret from you. What would you do? How far would you go to get even? Our story today is titled, Found Out My Best Friend and Boyfriend Were Having an Affair. Here's How I Got My Revenge. Let's get right into it. I never thought I'd be the girl to say this, but here I am, heart shattered, trust broken. It's funny, isn't it? How one moment can turn your entire world upside down. That moment for me? Finding those videos. God, even thinking about it makes my stomach twist. I was at Lara's, my supposed best friend since forever, celebrating her brother's 22nd birthday. The house was buzzing with people, laughter echoing off the walls, drinks flowing like there was no tomorrow. And me? I was floating through it all, tipsy and carefree, until I wasn't. Laura had disappeared outside, mingling or whatever, and I decided it was selfie time. Her phone was lying around, and we always shared everything, so I didn't even hesitate. A few goofy shots later, I had this brilliant idea to send them to myself, for memories. That's when everything changed. Typing in my name, I paused. Ethan's name popped up just below mine. Why? Why would my boyfriend and my best friend be texting? Curiosity morphed into suspicion, morphed into action. I clicked on his name, my heart racing, and that's when I saw them. For videos, thumbnails glaring back at me with a story I wasn't prepared to read. The first video was enough to burn every memory of us to ashes. Ethan, blindfolded, and Laura, very much not, in a way that screamed betrayal. They were intimate, to put it mildly. Each video escalated, their actions a stark contrast to the love and trust one thought we shared. I felt like I was outside my body, watching someone else's life implode. The room spun, my heart pounded, and I had to get out. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I left the party without a word to anyone, especially not Laura. Ethan's been calling, voicemails piling up with him crying, begging for a chance to explain. But what's there to explain? The videos spoke volumes, volumes of lies and deceit. And Laura? She's been radio silent. Guilt, maybe? Or just indifference? Hard to tell with the backstabber. Now, I'm here, sitting in my room, replaying that night over and over. The betrayal by the two people I trusted most has left me reeling, unsure of how to move forward or if I even want to confront them. Part of me wants to scream, to make them feel a fraction of this pain, but another part wonders if silence is the best revenge. What do you do when your world crumbles? When the two people you loved and trusted the most leave you questioning everything? I guess I'm about to find out. The night was supposed to be simple. Can you give Laura a ride home? I asked Ethan, my voice muffled by the phone and the sounds of the bustling cafe where I worked. It was just a favor, nothing more. Ethan, always the charmer, agreed without a second thought. Of course, babe, no problem at all, he assured me, his voice a smooth balm to my frazzled nerves. Little did I know, that ride would mark the beginning of the end. I was pulling an all-nighter at the cafe, the kind of shift that leaves you questioning your life choices. Meanwhile, Laura was out, living it up at a graduation party. She'd been my rock since we were kids, but that night, she became something else entirely. When I finally got a break, my phone lit up with a message from Ethan. Lara's home safe. Heading back to our place now. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by exhaustion. I trusted Ethan implicitly, and Laura was like the sister I never had. It never crossed my mind to doubt either of them. But then, things started to shift. Lara's texts became more frequent, her questions about Ethan more pointed. How's Ethan doing? He's such a sweetheart for giving me a ride. Her words, innocent on the surface, began to carry a weight that I couldn't shake off. And Ethan? He just laughed it off, his usual easygoing self, oblivious to the storm brewing on the horizon. The first seeds of doubt were planted the next time we all hung out together. Laura, who was always more jeans and a t-shirt than anything else, showed up in a dress that left little to the imagination. She clung to Ethan's every word, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes, her eyes lingering on him a little too long. It was subtle, but undeniable. Something had shifted in the dynamics of our trio, and I found myself on the outside looking in. I tried to brush it off, to convince myself that I was reading too much into it. After all, they were just being friendly, right? But the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach wouldn't go away. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. You know what's coming, but you're powerless to stop it. Ethan? I found myself asking one night, the words slipping out before I could think better of it, "Is everything okay with you and Laura?" His response was immediate, a perfect blend of confusion and concern. "Of course, babe. Why wouldn't it be?" He pulled me close, his embrace meant to reassure, but the seeds of doubt had already taken root, growing with every passing day. As I lay in his arms that night, the silence between us spoke volumes. The affair might not have been out in the open yet, but the foundation of trust we'd built was starting to crumble. And with each passing moment, I felt myself slipping further away from the two people I loved most, caught in a web of betrayal that I never saw coming. The moment I thought about confronting them, my heart raced like it was trying to beat its way out of my chest. The idea alone felt like stepping off a cliff. Ethan and Laura, the two pillars of my world, suddenly seemed like strangers. Am I just being paranoid? I whispered to the empty room, half hoping for an answer that never came. Ethan's behavior didn't help. If anything, it only tangled my thoughts further. He was the same loving, attentive boyfriend he'd always been, maybe even more so. Flowers, just because. Surprise dinners, his warmth enveloping me in a way that almost made me forget the storm clouds gathering in my mind. "Everything okay, Mia?" His voice, laced with genuine concern, would pull me back from the edge every time I neared it. "You've seemed a bit off lately." How could I tell him what was swirling in my head? That every laugh shared with Laura felt like a knife twisting in my back. And Laura, God, Laura. She crossed lines I didn't even know we had, her questions about Ethan veering from curious to invasive. How did Ethan react to that story you told him? He's got such a great laugh. Comments that once would have seemed innocuous now felt loaded, each one chipping away at my resolve. Their closeness was no longer a figment of my imagination. The way she sought him out, the energy between them, it was palpable, undeniable. Yet every time I steeled myself to confront them, to demand answers, I'd falter. Fear of shattering the fragile peace held me back, the peace that, deep down, I knew was already fractured. The tension became a constant companion, whispering doubts in my ear, painting my thoughts with suspicion. "Mia, you're just overthinking things," I'd tell myself, trying to brush away the unease that clung to me like a second skin. But the harder I tried to ignore it, the louder it became. One evening, as I watched Ethan and Laura laughing together over something trivial, something inside me snapped. The laughter wasn't for me. I was on the outside looking in on a connection that had somehow shifted away from our trio, excluding me, isolating me. I needed to talk to someone, anyone who could offer perspective without the emotional turmoil clouding my judgment. My mom, always my sounding board, answered on the first ring. "Honey, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice a soothing balm. Pouring out my fears and observations felt like releasing a valve, the pressure within easing slightly as I spoke. "Mia, listen to me," she said, her tone firm yet gentle. "Trust your gut. But remember, accusations need solid ground. Observe, reflect, and then act. Don't let fear make decisions for you." Her words, wise as always, gave me pause. Was I ready to face the potential truth, or was the comfort of ignorance easier to bear? The answer, much like my heart at that moment, was fragmented. As days turned into weeks, the dance continued. Ethan's affection became my anchor, Lara's boldness the storm that threatened to pull me under. The confrontation loomed large, an inevitable crossroads I wasn't sure I had the strength to face. Yet, in the silence of the night, with only my thoughts for company, I realized something had to give. The truth, no matter how painful, was better than the limbo of doubt. I resolved to find my moment, to confront the storm head-on. Little did I know, the eye of that storm was closer than I ever imagined. The air was thick with celebration. laughter weaving through the crowded backyard as I navigated my way through familiar faces, all gathered for Lara's brother's birthday bash. It was one of those nights where everything felt just right, or so I thought. Little did I know, my world was about to come crashing down in the most unexpected way. I remember feeling light, almost giddy, as I made my way inside Lara's house to escape the chill. The warmth of the interior hit me, a welcome embrace from the crisp night air. That's when I spotted Lara's phone, casually left on the kitchen counter among a clutter of party debris. A harmless idea struck me: why not take a few drunken selfies for laughs? We did it all the time, a silly tradition that never seemed to grow old. Flicking through the camera roll to find my latest series of goofy faces, I noticed the messaging app open in the background. An innocent glance turned into a curious peek, and that's when I saw Ethan's name, popping up in a way it had no right to. My heartbeat accelerated, a mix of confusion and a creeping dread taking hold as I tapped on his name, driven by a force I couldn't resist. The screen loaded, and suddenly, I wasn't in Lara's kitchen anymore. I was somewhere far off, a place where trust and love went to die. Videos, 4 of them, each a knife twisting deeper into my heart. My fingers trembled as I pressed play, each second unraveling the life I thought I knew. The first video was a blow I couldn't have prepared for. Ethan, my Ethan, with Lara in a way he was only supposed to be with me. Blindfolded, vulnerable, and completely unaware I would ever witness this. Their laughter, touches, the intimacy of their betrayal, it was all there, laid bare for my disbelieving eyes. I watched, frozen, as each video descended further into a nightmare. There they were, the two people I trusted most in the world, sharing moments meant for us, for me and Ethan. The realization hit me like a physical force, tears blurring my vision as the final video ended. The room spun around me, the sounds of the party outside a distant, mocking echo. I felt sick, heartbroken, and utterly betrayed. How? Why? Questions spiraled through my mind, but deep down, I knew the answers wouldn't change the raw, aching wound inside. I left the phone where it lay, a Pandora's box of shattered illusions. The urge to confront them, to scream and demand explanations, surged within me. Yet, my feet carried me away, out of Lara's house, away from the scene of my world's quiet collapse. The night air no longer felt crisp, it was cold, a chill that matched the sudden ice in my veins. As I walked, the images played on a loop in my mind, a cruel highlight reel of betrayal. Ethan's and Lara's laughter echoed in my ears, a soundtrack to the unraveling of my trust. I knew then, nothing would ever be the same. The unexpected twist in my story wasn't just a revelation, it was a turning point, a moment that redefined everything I thought I knew about love, friendship, and trust. The moment I stepped out of Lara's house, the cool night air felt like a slap to my face, a harsh contrast to the storm of emotions raging inside me. My phone buzzed incessantly, a relentless reminder of the reality I was desperately trying to escape. It was Ethan, of course. His name lit up my screen over and over, each call a stab of betrayal. I didn't need to hear his voice to know what he would say. The apologies, the explanations, the desperate pleas for understanding, they were all meaningless. How could words undo what I had seen? How could they stitch back together the trust that had been so carelessly ripped apart? I took a deep breath, the decision crystallizing in my mind with a cold, hard finality. Blocking them was almost cathartic, each button pressed a step towards severing the ties that bound me to the pain. Ethan, Lara, they were parts of my life that I needed to cut out, malignant growths that had hidden their toxicity until now. The walk home was a blur, my thoughts a tangled mess of anger, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of loss. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone was flooded with voicemails from Ethan. Part of me, a very small part, wanted to listen, to let his words wash over me in a wave of self-torture. But I resisted. There was nothing he could say that would change the images burned into my memory. Ethan again, I muttered to myself, deleting another voicemail unheard. His desperation was palpable, even through the digital distance I had put between us. Mia, please, just let me explain. It's not what it looks like. I swear to you, I didn't know she was filming. Please, babe, we need to talk about this. His words, even unheard, were like echoes in my mind. Could it be true? Did it even matter? The betrayal wasn't just in the act caught on camera, it was in the lies, the secrecy, and the fact that it happened at all. The apartment felt empty, colder somehow, as if the shadows held whispers of the love and trust that had once filled its corners. I sank onto the couch, the silence oppressive, the solitude a stark reminder of the gaping hole Ethan and Lara's actions had torn in my life. In that moment, the urge to confront Ethan, to scream and cry and make him understand the depth of the pain he had caused, was overwhelming. But what would it achieve? The damage was done, the trust shattered beyond repair. No, this was a wound that words could not heal. The night dragged on, each tick of the clock a reminder of the agonizing limbo I found myself in. To confront or to retreat, to seek answers or to accept the painful truth without them. These were questions I couldn't answer, not yet. For now, the only thing I could do was navigate the immediate aftermath of the betrayal, one agonizing step at a time. As dawn crept through the curtains, casting a soft light on the remnants of a life I thought I knew, I realized that this was just the beginning. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with pain, and the daunting task of rebuilding myself from the ashes of my shattered trust. But it was a road I would have to walk, one way or another. The second the idea took root, it was like a wildfire in my veins, consuming the remnants of the hurt and betrayal with a fierce, unyielding intensity. I wasn't going to let them get away with it, not without facing the consequences of their actions. Direct confrontation? No. That would be too easy, too quick. They deserved more. They deserved to feel a fraction of the pain they'd inflicted on me. I spent the night plotting, my mind racing with possibilities until it clicked, the perfect form of revenge. Exposing them, letting everyone see them for who they really were, felt like the only way to strip them of the facade they'd so carefully constructed. The videos were damning evidence, impossible to deny or explain away. I worked methodically, my actions fueled by a cold, detached resolve. Creating anonymous email accounts felt like donning a mask, a necessary shield to hide behind as I prepared to unleash the storm. The videos, once a source of unimaginable pain, were now my weapons, and I wielded them with a precision that surprised even myself. The emails were crafted with care, each word a calculated strike meant to maximize the impact. To Ethan's family, to Lara's, to our friends who'd unknowingly been complicit in their secret, no one was spared. The send button was pressed not once, but several times, each click a step towards my liberation from the agony they'd cause. I imagined the fallout, the shock and horror that would ripple through our circle as the truth came to light. There would be no place for them to hide, no shadows deep enough to conceal the depth of their betrayal. Ethan and Laura, exposed for all to see, their perfect images shattered beyond repair. As the reality of what I'd done began to sink in, a twisted satisfaction took hold. It wasn't joy, far from it, but it was a start, a small flicker of power in the vast darkness they'd left me in. I waited, the silence of the early hours a stark contrast to the chaos I knew was unfolding in the digital realm. My phone remained silent, a testament to the anonymity of my revenge. Yet, I could almost hear the whispers, the shocked gasps, and the inevitable fallout. Ethan and Laura, once inseparable, would now be united in disgrace, their betrayal laid bare for all to see. This wasn't forgiveness, nor was it a path to healing. But in that moment, it was enough. Enough to give me a sense of control, a brief respite from the crushing weight of my shattered trust. As dawn broke, casting a soft light on the remnants of my old life, I knew that nothing would ever be the same. But maybe, just maybe, I could start to rebuild, piece by fragile piece, in the aftermath of the storm I'd unleashed. The silence of the morning after was deafening, each tick of the clock a heavy, echoing reminder of the storm I had unleashed. The night before, my fingers had danced across my phone with a single-minded purpose, sending those videos into the digital ether. It was a calculated move, cold and precise, aimed at exposing the betrayal that had torn my world apart. Now, as dawn broke, the reality of what I had done began to settle in, heavy and inescapable. My phone buzzed relentlessly, a constant barrage of messages and notifications. The digital world was ablaze with the scandal I had ignited. Ethan and Laura, once pillars of my life, were now the epicenter of a social earthquake, their reputations crumbling under the weight of their actions. I had envisioned this moment, played it over in my mind as a scene of triumphant justice. But as I scrolled through the messages, the expected surge of satisfaction eluded me. Instead, a hollow emptiness gnawed at my insides, a realization that no amount of revenge could undo the pain or fill the void left by their betrayal. The opportunity for confrontation came unexpectedly at a gathering of mutual friends. The room was thick with tension, whispers darting through the air like arrows, each glance heavy with unspoken words. Ethan and Laura stood together, isolated, their eyes searching the room until they found mine. The moment was charged, a crackling anticipation of the inevitable clash. Ethan stepped forward, his face a mask of regret. "Mia, please, can we talk?" His voice was low, tinged with a desperation that might have once moved me. Laura stood by his side, her eyes downcast, a silent plea hanging between us. The words I had rehearsed for so long suddenly felt hollow. "There's nothing left to say," I responded, my voice steady but devoid of warmth. "You both made your choices, and now you have to live with them." The finality in my tone left no room for arguments or excuses. Turning my back on them, I walked away, leaving their apologies unacknowledged. It was a moment of closure, but not the kind I had imagined. There was no sense of victory, no triumphant exit, just a deep, aching sadness for what had been lost. In the days that followed, the fallout from the public exposure was impossible to ignore. Ethan's friendships deteriorated, his social circle shrinking as the reality of his actions set in. Laura faced a similar fate, her once vibrant presence now a shadow, tainted by the choices she had made. As I watched from a distance, the consequences of my revenge unfolding, a bitter truth settled in my heart. The destruction of their social lives, the isolation they faced, it didn't bring me peace. Instead, it served as a constant reminder of the betrayal, a wound that refused to heal. In the quiet moments, when the noise of the world faded into the background, I was forced to confront the scars that the betrayal had left on my soul. Trust, once given so freely, now felt like a luxury I could no longer afford. The walls I had built around my heart were higher, stronger, a fortress to protect me from the pain of betrayal. The journey from love to betrayal, from betrayal to revenge, had brought me to this place, a place of reflection, where the cost of my actions lay bare before me. Despite the successful revenge, satisfaction remained an elusive shadow, a reminder that some wounds run too deep to be healed by retribution alone. In the end, the downfall of Ethan and Laura was not a story of victory. It was a tale of loss, a cautionary reminder of the fragility of trust and the price of vengeance. As I moved forward, the lessons of this chapter etched deep in my heart. I knew the road to healing would be long and uncertain. But it was a road I was ready to walk, one step at a time, in search of a peace that revenge could never bring. The morning light crept through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room, illuminating a new chapter in my life. The past few months had been a whirlwind of emotions, a tumultuous journey through betrayal, pain, and ultimately, growth. As I sat at my desk, surrounded by textbooks and notes, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. My studies and part-time job had become my sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself in routine and responsibility, away from the chaos that had once consumed my life. Each day was a step forward, a testament to my resilience. I had learned to guard my heart, to see the red flags I had once so naively ignored. It was a cautious dance, one where I was constantly aware of the shadows of my past. Ethan's attempts to reach out had been a steady background noise, a reminder of the life I had left behind. His messages, filled with regret and pleas for forgiveness, went unanswered. It wasn't out of spite, but rather a necessary step towards healing. I had moved on, leaving him to grapple with the consequences of his actions. It was a chapter closed, a lesson learned. Lara's fate was a mirror to the consequences of betrayal. The vibrant, carefree friend I once knew had become a shadow of her former self, isolated by the very actions she thought she could hide. The backlash was swift, a social exile that left her grappling with guilt and loneliness. It pained me to see her fall so far, but it was a path she had chosen, a stark reminder of the fragile nature of trust. Despite the scars, the pain had carved a path to new beginnings. My world, once so narrowly focused on Ethan and Laura, had gradually expanded, welcoming new faces, new friendships. It was a cautious process, each new connection forged with a wisdom born from betrayal. Trust was no longer given freely, it was earned, a precious commodity that I guarded with vigilance. The final lesson, the silver lining in the stormy clouds of my past, was a profound understanding of my worth. Betrayal, while a bitter pill to swallow, had taught me the value of self-respect, the importance of setting boundaries, and the necessity of walking away from those who no longer served my best interests. It was a painful journey, but one that had ultimately led me to a place of strength and empowerment. As I turned my attention back to my studies, the noise of the world outside fading into a distant hum, I realized that the betrayal, though a defining moment, was no longer the anchor it had once been. It was a part of my story, but not the entirety of it. I had emerged from the darkness, not unscathed, but stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with its own challenges and triumphs, but I faced it with a newfound confidence. The lessons of the past, while hard-earned, had equipped me with the tools to navigate the complexities of life with grace and determination. Betrayal had broken me, but in its wake, I had discovered an unshakable sense of self, a compass by which to steer my future. And so, with a deep breath, I embraced the day, ready for whatever lay ahead, secure in the knowledge that I was no longer the person I had once been. I was stronger, wiser, and infinitely more capable of facing the world on my own terms. The final lesson had been learned, and with it, a new chapter had begun. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales of revenge. Don't forget to leave a comment below about what you would do in this situation. Thanks for watching, and welcome back to our channel, where we explore the most intense and unexpected stories about relationships, family, and personal growth. Today, we have a tale that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Imagine waiting for long years for your girlfriend to return from studying abroad, only to have your world turned upside down in the most shocking way possible. This is the story of trust, betrayal, and the quest for truth. Join me as we dive into this gripping story titled, "I Caught My Girlfriend Cheating with Her Friend's Husband and Then She Dumped Me." The chill of December didn't stand a chance against the warmth buzzing through me as I waited at the airport on December 15th, 2023. For years felt like a lifetime, but today, she was coming home. My girlfriend, the one who jetted off to study abroad, leaving a gaping hole in my daily life, was finally returning, even if just for the holidays. I couldn't help but bounce on my heels, a goofy grin plastered on my face, ignoring the curious glances from other bystanders. When she finally emerged, slightly tipsy from the flight's indulgences, our eyes locked, and it was like we were the only two people in the world. The drive home was surreal. She was here, in my car, her laughter filling the space between us, cutting through the years of distance. She queued up a playlist of our songs, and somewhere between the airport and our apartment, in a moment charged with reunion's raw energy, we reconnected in a way we hadn't in years. It was spontaneous, a bit reckless, but it felt like reclaiming a part of us lost in time. Walking into our apartment, I caught her glancing at her phone more often than I remembered. There was a slight shift, a sort of secrecy in the way she'd angled the screen away from me. But hey, after years of long distance, trust was our foundation. I shrugged it off, attributing it to her needing to catch up on messages from friends or perhaps jet-lagged making her crave some personal space. The next day, We ventured out for brunch at our favorite spot, the one where we had our first date. It felt normal, comfortable, and right. We talked, laughed, and shared glances that said, "I've missed this." The physical connection was undeniable, a reminder of the chemistry that had first drawn us together. It felt like we were picking up right where we left off. No distance or time could dampen what we had. Yet, as days passed, her phone became a constant companion during our moments together. Movie nights ended with her on one end of the couch, me on the other, and her attention firmly locked on her screen. I noticed, sure, but never brought it up. Why stir trouble when everything else felt so right? December 22nd rolled around too quickly, and she was packing up to spend Christmas with her family abroad. She promised we'd stay in touch, FaceTime every day, and share in the holiday spirit, despite the miles. It sounded perfect, but the reality was different. Getting her on a call became a Herculean task, each attempt met with excuses about family outings or bad Wi-Fi. Concern crept in, whispering doubts I was quick to silence. We did manage to connect on Christmas Day, though, and for a while, it was like nothing had changed. We laughed, reminisced, and made plans for the future. Plans filled with hope and shared dreams. But as the call ended and I was left in the silence of my apartment, the joy of the moment faded, leaving me with an unease I couldn't quite shake off. Was I just being paranoid, or was the distance between us more than just physical now? The trust that had once been unshakable now seemed to have developed hairline cracks, invisible but ever present. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but wonder if the distance had changed us more than I'd realized, or if, maybe, I was just afraid of what the future held for us. The air was frosty when she returned on December 27th, but the chill inside wasn't from the weather. It was her, distant like she'd brought back a piece of the foreign winter in her heart. She was glued to her phone, her fingers swiping with purpose, her eyes rarely meeting mine. Even as I tried to close the gap between us on the couch, she'd subtly shift away, her phone always in hand. It was like she was physically there, but miles away in spirit. Then came December 30th, a day that started like any other, but ended with my world turned upside down. "We need to talk," she said, the weight of those words hanging heavy between us. She talked about feeling neglected, about mistrust that seemed to come out of nowhere. I was blindsided, scrambling to find words, to understand where all this was coming from. "I just think it's best if we end things," she concluded, her voice steady, her decisions seemingly final. Desperation kicked in. "We can work through this," I pleaded, my mind racing to offer solutions, changes, anything. "I can be better, more attentive, whatever you need." But her resolve was a fortress, my words, mere whispers against its walls. She had made up her mind, leaving me grappling with a reality I wasn't ready to accept. However, a sliver of hope emerged when we decided to give it another go on our city break planned for January 2nd. It was like a ceasefire, a brief respite from the turmoil. Those days were a mix of the familiar and the tentative, moments of intimacy intertwining with bursts of laughter. It felt like navigating a minefield blindfolded, exhilarating yet terrifying, not knowing if the next step would bring us closer or set everything ablaze again. By January 6th, as I drove her to the airport, the goodbye was filled with promises of effort and making it work. Yet, the unease lingered, a silent passenger on the ride back home. Her words said one thing, but the hesitation in her voice, the fleeting looks, told a different story. It was like watching a replay of our happiest moments, only this time, the colors were muted, the sounds a little off. The drive home was a blur, my thoughts a jumbled mess. The silence of the apartment was a stark contrast to the chaos in my mind. I replayed our conversations, searching for signs, for reasons why things felt so off. Was it me? Was it her? Was it the distance that had wedged itself between us, not just physically but emotionally? In that solitude, the realization hit hard. We were two people holding on to the ghost of what we used to be, scared to let go, yet hurting from holding on too tight. The promise to make it work was like a band-aid on a wound that needed stitches, temporary relief doomed to give way. I sank into the couch, her absence more palpable than ever. The room was filled with memories, with echoes of laughter and whispers of love, now overshadowed by the weight of unsaid words and unresolved feelings. The journey ahead was uncertain, a path shrouded in fog, with the only guarantee being that it wouldn't be easy. But as the night crept in, one thing was clear. This was a chapter of our lives closing, with the next page still unwritten, and the pen heavy in my hands. It was January 9th when my world got flipped, yet again. "I think I've settled for less," she said, her words slicing through the air like a cold breeze. "I need space," she added, as if the miles and oceans between us during her studies weren't space enough. There I was, tossed into the limbo of hopeful waiting, clinging to the thin thread of maybe, just maybe, things could turn around. Days turned into nights filled with restlessness. My mind, a relentless detective, couldn't shake off the gnawing suspicion. So, I turned to technology for answers. Find My iPhone became my ally. And there it was, her location pinging from the same, friends, house over and over. Space? More like specific coordinates to where our relationship's trust was being questioned. I confronted her, my voice laced with a mix of hope and dread. "So, this friend's place. You're there a lot, huh?" Her response was quick, too rehearsed. "Yeah, just hanging out, you know. It's nothing." But the seed of doubt was planted, watered by her evasion and nurtured by her half-hearted reassurances. The pressure built in a volcano on the brink. I needed clarity, a solid ground to stand on. "We can't keep doing this dance," I told her. "You need to decide what you want." It was a plea, a last-ditch effort to salvage the love I thought we had. But her resolve was ironclad, her words final. "I just need to be alone," she said, and with that, she cut me off from Find My iPhone, severing the last thread of our digital connection. Then, out of the blue, she shared her Uber location with me. The destination? The same house. A cruel twist of fate or a slip-up, it didn't matter. It was a breadcrumb trail leading to the truth I wasn't sure I wanted to find. I confronted her again, my frustration boiling over. "You keep ending up at this place. You're telling me there's nothing going on?" Her denial came as swiftly as before, a well-rehearsed script, devoid of guilt. "I've told you, it's not like that," she insisted, but the conviction was missing, her words hollow. The realization hit me like a freight train. The person I loved, trusted, and waited for was now a stranger, her actions and words weaving a web of deceit I could no longer ignore. The fabric of our relationship, once woven with threads of love and trust, was now frayed, torn by lies and secrets. As I sat alone, the silence of the room amplifying the chaos in my mind, I understood that this was more than just about her needing space or finding herself. It was about respect, honesty, and the painful truth that sometimes love isn't enough to bridge the gap between two hearts drifting apart. The chapter of us, once vibrant and full of promise, was closing, leaving behind a trail of what-ifs and memories fading into the backdrop of a love story that lost its way. The moment we blocked each other on all social media, it felt like plunging into an ice-cold ocean, the shock of it leaving me gasping for air. There I was, floating in a vortex of anxiety, doubt, and the kind of betrayal that eats at you from the inside out. The silence from her end was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding in my mind. It was in one of those long, sleepless nights that I stumbled upon something that turned my world upside down. Spotify, of all things, became the unexpected witness to her infidelity. Their playlists, a digital tapestry of songs, each one a thread in the story of her betrayal. It was like discovering a secret language, one that spelled out my worst fears in melodies and lyrics. Driven by a cocktail of hurt and desperation, I dialed her number, my heart pounding against my chest. The phone rang, each tone a step deeper into the abyss. Then, a click. "Hello." Her voice, once my comfort, now a sharp reminder of our fractured reality. "Is it true?" I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause, heavy and loaded, before she hung up, a brief but definitive confirmation of my suspicions. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text from her, apologizing for being rude, as if manners were the crux of our problems. I couldn't hold back. "Tell me the truth," I texted back, my fingers trembling over the screen. And she did. "There's someone else," she admitted, her words like a final nail in the coffin of our relationship. She spoke of love for this new man, citing the attention he lavished on her, attention I supposedly failed to provide. I sat there, phone in hand, a numbness spreading through me. The depth of her deceit was breathtaking. All those times she'd asked for presents, for tokens of my affection, she'd been nurturing another relationship behind my back. It wasn't just the infidelity, it was the calculated manipulation of my feelings, keeping me as a safety net while she explored new possibilities. The realization was a crushing blow. I'd been a pawn in her game, my love and commitment exploited for her selfish needs. The weight of this truth was suffocating, pressing down on me until I felt I could no longer breathe. I was left to grapple with the shattered pieces of what I thought was a partnership built on trust and mutual respect. As I reflected on her actions, the scale of her betrayal unfolded before me. It wasn't an impulsive mistake or a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a series of calculated decisions made at the expense of my trust and emotional well-being. The person I had loved and trusted for years had become a stranger, her actions alien and cruel. In the aftermath, I found myself spiraling, each day a battle against the tide of emotions threatening to pull me under. The pain of her betrayal, the humiliation of being deceived, and the realization of my own naivety converged into a storm of despair. But amidst the wreckage, a painful clarity began to emerge. I understood that this wasn't just about her infidelity or the end of our relationship. It was a harsh lesson in self-respect and the importance of recognizing one's worth. The road to recovery would be long and fraught with challenges, but it was a journey I had to undertake, not for her, but for myself. As I faced the daunting task of rebuilding my life, I knew that the scars of her deceit would always be a part of me. Yet, in that moment of profound loss, I also found a glimmer of hope. Hope that, with time, I could learn to trust again, to love again, and most importantly, to forgive, not for her sake, but for my own. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, life throws you a curveball that knocks you off your feet. That was me, the guy who thought he had the perfect relationship, until the day I stumbled upon the undeniable proof of her betrayal. It was like a gut punch, the kind that leaves you gasping for air, questioning every moment, every memory. The discovery was just the beginning, the catalyst for a descent I hadn't seen coming. I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, swinging wildly between wanting to fix what we had and burning everything to the ground in search of revenge. It was a toxic mix, one that began to eat away at the fabric of my daily life. Work became an afterthought, a place I showed up to but wasn't really present. Deadlines slipped by unnoticed, and projects that once ignited my passion felt like burdens. I was unraveling, thread by thread, and the worst part? I didn't even care. My family and friends, they noticed. How could they not? I was a shell of the man I used to be, hollowed out by anger and pain. They reached out, hands extended with words of comfort and offers of escape. But I pushed them away, too consumed by my own sense of betrayal to accept their help. "I've got this," I'd say, a lie I told myself more than anyone else. As the days turned into weeks, I became a detective in my own twisted drama, piecing together the timeline of her infidelity. Social media, once a place of shared photos and happy memories, became my hunting ground. Every like, every comment, a potential clue. Mutual friends, once sources of joy, were now interrogated, their words sifted for hints of deceit. My obsession knew no bounds. I confronted him, the other man, in a showdown that was more about my shattered ego than seeking any real answers. Words were exchanged, tempers flared, and for a moment, I teetered on the edge of violence, driven by a desire to reclaim some semblance of control. But this path, this need for vengeance, it led me down dark alleys I never intended to explore. Legal warnings soon followed, a stark reminder that my quest for justice was veering into dangerous territory. Privacy violations, they said, harassment claims, words that felt like handcuffs, restraining my every move. In a desperate bid for vindication, I turned to social media, airing our dirty laundry for the world to see. It was a mistake, a miscalculation driven by pain. Instead of rallying allies, I found myself more isolated, caught in the crossfire of divided loyalties. Friends I'd known for years chose sides, leaving me adrift in a sea of judgment and whispered conversations. Work, my once secure haven, became a battleground. My performance, hampered by sleepless nights and days spent in the grip of obsession, plummeted. Warnings turned into stern conversations, and eventually, the demotion came. It was a blow, not just to my career but to my identity, a confirmation of the failure I felt etched into every aspect of my life. I was lost, adrift in a storm of my own making, unable to see the shore. The man I once was, confident, driven, happy, seemed like a stranger, a distant memory overshadowed by the wreckage of the present. The pursuit of truth, of some semblance of justice, had cost me more than I ever imagined, leaving me to wonder if any of it was worth the price. In the thick of a storm you've whipped up yourself, there's a desperate kind of clarity that comes with knowing you've got nothing left to lose. That was me, gearing up for one last stand, a final showdown that I hoped would bring me some semblance of closure. I was gunning for remorse, maybe a sliver of guilt, or, at the very least, an explanation that made sense of the chaos she'd left in her wake. We met in the very cafe where our story began, the irony of the setting not lost on me. There she was, the same, yet unrecognizably different, her indifference a stark contrast to the turmoil churning inside me. As I laid bare my pain, seeking some acknowledgement of the wreckage, her responses were cold, calculated. The finality in her voice, the way she spoke of her new life without a hint of regret, it was a clear message. I was a chapter firmly closed. The aftermath was brutal. My attempts at reaching out, at salvaging what dignity I had left, were met with legal threats, her words slicing through any hope of reconciliation. It was a wake-up call, a bitter realization that the battleground I was on was one where I stood utterly alone. Then came the wedding of a mutual friend, an event that should have been a celebration but instead felt like walking into the lion's den. There they were, the perfect couple, while whispers of my downfall circulated like fine wine. My presence was a reminder of a scandal, my every move watched, analyzed, and judged. It was in that moment, surrounded by faces I once considered friends, that I truly understood the depth of my isolation. In the months that followed, I tried to move on, to find solace in new beginnings. But each attempt was a glaring reminder of the past, my unresolved feelings acting as a barrier I couldn't breach. The shadow of public outbursts and whispered accusations followed me, a stigma I couldn't shake. The final nail in the coffin was a letter from her, an impersonal epitaph to what we once had. Her words were sharp, a clinical dissection of our relationship, each sentence reinforcing her decision as one made in pursuit of her happiness. It was a cold, calculated goodbye, one that left no room for doubt or hope. I was left reeling, a ship adrift in a sea of my own making. The realization that I had lost not just the woman I loved but everything that defined me was crushing. My dignity, my friends, even my sense of purpose, all casualties of a war I'd waged on myself. Professionally, I was a ghost, my once promising career a casualty of my inability to separate personal turmoil from my work. The day I lost my job was just another chapter in the tragic saga I'd authored, a tangible reminder of how far I'd fallen. Sitting amidst the ruins of what my life had become, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led me here. It was a stark landscape, one where every choice, every action had contributed to my undoing. The pursuit of closure, of understanding, had cost me everything, leaving me to navigate the wreckage of a life I scarcely recognize. In the aftermath of heartbreak and betrayal, I found myself adrift in a sea of confusion and sorrow. The life I knew, the love I cherished, was gone, leaving behind a void that seemed impossible to fill. It was during these darkest hours that I stumbled upon an online forum, a haven for souls shattered by deceit. Reading through the stories of others, I felt a kinship in our shared pain, a flicker of hope in the solidarity of our experiences. Compelled by this newfound community, I took the brave step of seeking therapy. Sitting in that small, dimly lit room, I poured out my heart to a stranger. It was a daunting task, unraveling the layers of trust, betrayal, and the raw wounds of my public breakdown. Yet, with each session, I felt a weight lifting, a clarity emerging from the fog of my despair. It was during this period of self-reflection and healing that fate threw a curveball my way, a chance encounter with a woman who sparked something in me I thought was lost forever. Her laughter, her empathy, it offered a glimpse of what could be. But the specter of my past loomed large, the scars of betrayal too fresh, sabotaging what little hope we might have had for something more. The realization that I needed a fresh start was sudden but undeniable. I decided to move to a new city, to leave behind the ghosts of my past relationship and the failures that haunted me. Packing up my life was a bittersweet journey through memory lane, each photo, each memento a reminder of better times, tinged with regret and what-ifs. Arriving in my new city, I was met with the harsh reality that escaping my past was not as simple as changing my address. Despite the physical distance, the reach of social media and the whispers of mutual connections ensured that my reputation had followed me. The shadow of my former life cast a long, dark silhouette over my attempts to start anew. The offer of a new job provided a much-needed distraction, a chance to rebuild my professional life and, perhaps, my sense of self. Yet, connecting with my new colleagues proved challenging. The fear of repeating past mistakes, of opening up only to be hurt again, kept me at arm's length, trapped in a self-imposed exile. In search of an outlet, a way to process my journey and perhaps help others navigating their own paths through heartbreak, I started a blog. Writing anonymously, I shared my story, my mistakes, my lessons learned. The act of putting words to my pain, to my growth, became a therapeutic endeavor, a way to make sense of the chaos that had once threatened to consume me. Now, as I stand looking out over the skyline of my new city, I'm struck by the duality of my circumstances. Yes, I've managed to put physical distance between myself and the reminders of my past, but the emotional scars remain, a testament to the cost of love and betrayal. It's a sobering realization, one that comes with its own form of peace. For in acknowledging the scars, in accepting the pain and the lessons it has taught me, I find myself ready to face whatever comes next, armed with a deeper understanding of myself and a cautious hope for the future. The journey has been long, fraught with setbacks and moments of despair, but also marked by growth and unexpected moments of grace. As the sun sets on this chapter of my life, I'm reminded that while the past may shape us, it does not define us. The true measure of our strength lies in our ability to rise from the ashes of our darkest days, to forge ahead with resilience, and to open our hearts once more, despite knowing the risks. This is the true cost of love and betrayal, but also the undeniable value of hope and redemption. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update on our latest stories. Until next time, welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm thrilled to have you here for another captivating tale that will tug at your heartstrings and keep you on the edge of your seat. Today's story is one of love, betrayal, and the quest for self-discovery. It's titled, I Closed Up the Coffee Shop, Then a Customer Lost Her Mind, Called the Cops Over Missing Earbuds. Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go. So, I work in a coffee shop. Most of our customers are genuinely lovely people, but over the years, I have learned about the levels of entitlement and just plain crazy that exist. To be honest, I didn't think anyone could surprise me anymore. Tonight's events might actually have surpassed the guy who put a curse on me and my family. The guy who threw a ceramic cup at my head one morning. The drunk girls who threw up all over the front door at 7 a.m. then walked in and got grumpy that we didn't have any vegan breakfast items. The time a guy managed to get himself so wound up that he started swearing at me because I hadn't laughed hard enough at his "if you can't find a product on the till, then it's free" joke that I have previously never ever heard before. Ever. Honest. Yeah, okay. So today I was cleaning up like usual, and for once, it was going pretty smoothly. One of those dream shifts where you look around and just know you're going to get out on time. No last-minute customers demanding you make drinks and mess up every piece of equipment you've just spent an hour cleaning. It was glorious. I did the usual rounds telling the last few stragglers that we were closing in 5, so if they could start finishing up and getting themselves ready and so on. And I went through to the office to start the admin. Now, one thing you need to know is our company policy states that you can't take the till off and count it until the doors are locked. Obviously, you can't lock the doors until all the customers have left. And this is usually not a problem. So I came back through to lock the doors, and there she is. Let's call her Karen, okay? Karen is standing near the front door and emptying out the entire contents of her purse and pram all over a table. I looked at the girl who I was working with and raised an eyebrow. She's working with me long enough to recognize the "what the hell is going on" look. Apparently, Karen had lost an earbud. Great. So since she's been a regular customer for over a year, I put on my best customer service act and go across. We went back and checked where I knew she'd been sitting. Then check out the other table she had also been sitting at earlier. Turns out I never want to put my bare hands that far down the sides of the sofas again. We both searched and couldn't see anything. I offered for her to leave her details in case it turned up in the morning. I'm on early, so I'd have another look tomorrow. But nope. This wasn't good enough. Before my eyes, this usually very normal, polite, pretty, reserved grown woman turned into a raging banshee, screeching about how they are 150-pound earpods. Several things happened over the next half hour. Her husband appeared. Someone needs to give that man a medal, or maybe a CT scan. He quickly sussed out the situation and tried to talk some sense into her. She then started screaming about how she wasn't leaving until it was found, and she was calling the police. At one point, they were physically fighting over her phone while she dialed 999, and he was calling her crazy. Side note, never call a Karen crazy. It does not end well, my friend. I was standing to the side quietly watching this all unfold, keys in one hand and phone in the other, while texting my boss what was going on and reminding her she really does not pay me enough to deal with this. Being the absolute champion boss she is, she called and heard some of that chaos going on in the background. Karen's poor husband continued to try and reason with her. There was a little more chat between me and him while she wailed down the phone at the police. She started demanding I go check the rubbish bags, apparently telling her she was more than welcome to go check them herself. But they were in the skip bins at the back of the building. Was just not the right answer. Eventually, her extremely patient husband got sick of her, so he left. At one point, she shouted at my colleague who asked her to move so she could finish mopping the floor, which sicked Karen off again. Her husband reappeared as she was kicking off at me again for stepping in and saying the girl didn't shout at her, and pointing out that after her behavior for the past 20 minutes, she was in no position to decide who is and is not shouting. It was at this point she finally pushed the limit of my patience when she said the words, "I am not leaving until you show me respect. You would treat me differently if I was from this country." Now, something else you should know, I'm not actually from this country either. I might have the local accent, but my birth certificate states something different. I'm also not white, so I take particular offense when someone tries to use a race card in a racist way. Sometimes people are just jerks, and it has nothing to do with the skin color of anyone involved. So my restrained customer persona slipped. I left one of those "are you kidding me" laughs. I said the words, "Did you actually just call me racist?" "Nope, I'm out." While her husband started having a go at her for being ridiculous, I went and grabbed a till and stormed off into the office, half expecting to come back out and find Karen chaining herself to the front door and chanting, "We shall not be moved." About 10 minutes later, two wonderful police officers showed up. Karen had suddenly turned into a timid and demure, delicate little victim again while whining about her plight to these guys. They also quickly worked out what was going on. Apparently, the call they got had said it was a domestic incident. It was clearly not a domestic incident. They spent 5 minutes searching the same areas and also found no AirPod in sight and suggested she leave her contact details for us to call her if it turned up in the morning. Karen thought this was a great idea. I pointed to the counter and said the pen and paper were still sitting there from when we offered that same thing an hour before. Granted, it was a childish move, but after hearing the police officers ask him where her child was while she played with the AirPod, my last silver of understanding and patience evaporated. Turns out Karen had freely given her very expensive, arguably overpriced headphones to her 4-year-old child to play with, then flipped out and called the police when one went missing. Seriously, I can't even begin to explain how livid I was at this point. Needless to say, she was heavily scolded and warned by the police officers. She actually burst into tears, and she is now barred from the premises by orders of my boss. Best boss ever. So, I've started to get into belly socks, butterfly knives, like a couple months ago. I love it very much, and I have a couple of knives. I love to do it in public too, but when I'm around people, I always use my crack racking version 2.5, basically a trainer knife, so it doesn't have an edge. Today I was walking with my friends and I was playing with my trainer knife as usual when a kid runs up to me. Hi, what's that? Can I try it? The kid was around like 9 or 10. Sure, but do you have any of your parents here? Because I don't want to get in trouble. Yeah, my mom is here. And he runs to his mother and comes back a couple of minutes later. Mom, it's him. He has that thing. The kid was really excited at this point. Can you show us some tricks, please? Sure. So I started to do a couple of easier tricks like a thumb around. Hey, put that knife away. You're gonna hurt us. No, I can't do that, even if I wanted to. This is a training knife, so it's fully dull and doesn't have an edge. And then I grabbed a blade. Put that away or I'm going to call the police. If you want to, you're going to be the only one who's in trouble. So we waited there until the police arrived. Yep, she called him. So, what seems to be the problem here? This young man has a knife and hurt us. Her kid says. No, he didn't say anything wrong. The police officer turns to me. Is that true? You've got a knife? Yes, officer. I've got one in my pocket. It's a butterfly knife, but it's a trainer so it doesn't have an edge. Can you show it to me? Slowly. Sure. And I reached into my pocket and handed it to the officer by the blade. So he sees it doesn't have an edge. Okay, I see no problem here. Thank you, sir. And he started to hand me my knife, but the entitled parent snapped it out of the officer's hand and decided, I don't know why, to slap the officer. Ma'am, put that knife down and put your hands behind your back. Now. But I'm just doing what you can't do. Then she threw my knife full force to the ground. And the rest of the story was that the mother got arrested for lying to an officer, harming him, and damaging someone's property. And me and my friend stayed with the kid until his dad arrived. So, without getting too political, we recently had an election in the USA. My aunt supported one side while her husband and adult offspring supported the other side. The election did not go the way my aunt wanted it to. Aunt proceeded to flip her crap, breaking things, yelling, and even going as far as to set her daughter's "I voted" sticker on fire. Her husband called the cops declined to arrest her for anything, but suggested that she find a different place to stay for the night. This happened yesterday in New Jersey. Fast forward to 2 a.m. today. Here I am sleeping peacefully in my home with my family, over 500 miles from all that drama. My fence alarm goes off, waking me up. I don't know if it's a bear or a trespasser, so I get my pants on and grab my shotgun just to be safe. Turns out, my aunt cut the locks off my front gate because she couldn't get in, and I wasn't entering my phone. Why did she have bolt cutters in her car? So I safely stow my weapon and ask her what the hell. She starts crying and screaming. Mind you, this is at 2 a.m. in a quiet rural community about how the devil took her family and they threw her out. And she says that since she has nowhere else to go, I need to let her in. so she can stay in my guest room for a while. I told her one of my guildies is using that room right now. The room is occupied. This person came from Texas all the way to West Virginia to hang out with me. I'm not going to toss them out with 30 seconds of notice, because my aunt showed up. So she decides to call the police and tell them that I'm keeping her from entering her home. We're out in the woods, so the cops don't get here quickly. 4:41 in the morning, the cops showed up. I see them talking to her in my driveway. She shows them the bolt cutters and the ruined lock. A few minutes later, the officer knocks on my door. Your tenant claims that. I immediately cut him off and told him that I do not have a tenant. I own and occupy the structure. Then I offered to show him the deed. Well, this woman claims that. I cut him off again. What does the address of her ID say? At this point, the cop is pissed at me. I can tell. So I try to de-escalate the situation. Look, man, she doesn't live here. She has never lived here. That's my aunt. She lives in New Jersey. Please check her ID card. The cop calms down a bit and lets me know that he will talk to her and then comes back. 10 minutes later, the cops come back to my door. 3 of them this time. Not just the one from earlier. One of them had stripes and a rocker on his arm. He asks me if there is any way Aunt can stay here for the night, because she's too drunk to drive, so he can't let her back on the road. This woman just drove from New Jersey to West Virginia drunk. Thank God she didn't kill anyone. I told him that she cannot stay here, but that I'm sure there is room in the local jail. The cop asks me if she can just sleep in her car in my driveway and leave in the morning. I told him absolutely not. When she wakes up in the morning, I would just have to call him to get her off of my property, so that would solve nothing, and I ask him to remove her from my property. Long story short, her car got towed and she is in a drunk tank for the night. I was a witness to this a long time ago, and the results were learned by word of mouth. Once upon a time, there was a kid. Let's call him Marco. Marco was your everyday kid. A little skinny. I remember him being slightly geeky, and if you left your pins unattended, he'd disassemble them before you turned back around in your seat at times. He was nice, polite, and fairly helpful. This was middle school. One day, though, he does it to a bully, and let's call him Polo. Polo is huge but was fat. He looks like if you drill 3 holes into him, a giant could use him for bowling. He's not nice, he's not handsome, and he's got a posse of equally disgusting friends who all gang up together to bully others. I suspect that if they hadn't ganged up with each other, they would have been bullied. Perhaps they have been in the past and got a taste of power over others when they ganged up. I don't know. I kept to myself. One day, I saw Marco with a swollen eye and wet hair. He's limping a bit too, and his backpack is ripped. I ask him what the hell happened, and turns out Polo threw him into a bathroom stall by his backpack, which ripped. The toilet got him in a knee, and Polo shoved his face into the water, bashing his eye into the seat. I asked why Polo had done this to him, and he says, I took his pin apart. It was just a big crystal or some cheap pin like that. Things escalate over the next few weeks. Eventually, Marco has to take time off when Polo strips him naked in the bathroom except for his boxers and makes him shove them into the toilet. The school, being full of your typical jerks, tries to expel Marco for damage to school property and does nothing to Polo. This is taught by video evidence of the gang leaving the bathroom, laughing and rifling through Marco's backpack, then tossing it in the trash. When Marco comes back, he's different. He's not happy. He's quite subdued, and he doesn't talk to anyone, and bruises magically appear on him between classes. He withdraws into himself and begins to look positively skeletal. Of course, no one at the school does anything except one nice jock. He comes across Polo stealing Marco's backpack and Polo into a trash can. Of course, he's suspended, but does it again when he comes back. The teachers give up on suspending the jerk after his parents threaten to sue. The fact that someone bothered to stand up for him, though, seems to have given life back to Marco. He starts opening back up and putting weight back on, which is very good. One day, though, he's wearing a scarf, a very special, beautiful knitted scarf. His grandfather had knitted for him. Yes, grandfather before he died. Polo steals it and comes back the next day with a bag of ashes, handing it to Marco. And he laughs hysterically. Marco comes back the next day with a backpack full of sugar-free Haribo gummy bears. Polo, being the glutton that he is, steals every single bag of bears and eats them by the throughout the day. Marco cries. But I remember something in his sobs didn't quite reach his eyes. Near the end of the school day, Polo lurches out of the classroom and pulls for the bathroom. He doesn't come back the next day. Or the next. Someone says they saw blood in the bathroom. Polo comes back a few days later with an eye patch and mottled, fading bruises all across his face. I believe it's called petechiae. He's permanently blind in his left eye, and bruising makes him look like a ripening fruit for as long as it lasts. He's in and out of school for doctor's appointments for a while. He did not mess with Marco again, and instead became very introverted and quiet. The reports of blood in the toilet of the bathroom he went to were never confirmed. But it's quite likely. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Wow, what an emotional journey that was. If you enjoyed these unbelievable real-life stories and want to hear more, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know if you have any jaw-dropping stories of your own. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our upcoming episodes. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one on